everyone, it's Michelle Holly-Brooks with Unbridled Change, and I am really excited about this new blog series that I am getting ready to start recording. I have been thinking a lot about transformation lately, and I just did a series, a little quick video on some Eden energy exercises that help us deal with transition moments when we're kind of, getting ready to start into school, or we're having to transition maybe from one job to another, or just any other moment that we kind of feel that there's some anxiety that kind of bubbles up. And it led me into thinking of what is the difference between a transition moment and something that is being called forward to really bring about transformational change, and how we can tell the difference of those two. And then if we're in the middle of true transformational change, it can feel chaotic. It can feel like you're in this hurricane of chaos and you have no ground underneath you and you don't know where you're at. And so I was like, maybe I'll write a little blog post about transitions. And I started to write, and I got really carried away, and I was writing basically a small ebook. And I thought, why don't I turn this into a series about transformational change versus a little ebook? And so here we are. Welcome to week 1. This week we are going to explore what are the general packages that transformation comes in. Next week, we're going to talk about the stages of transformation, because there is like a little pathway. And I have found that, again, knowledge is power. And if we know that there is kind of like a normal curve to transformational change, there are some stages that you can kind of pinpoint and say, ooh, I think I'm in this stage. It helps us feel like there is a little bit of ground underneath us, and that we have a lifeline through this process, that we're normal, that everybody kind of goes through this, even though if you're in the middle of transformational change or you've been through one in the past, you know that there's this little point where you're like, what is wrong with me? Like, I don't understand. Is there am I going crazy? And the answer is no, you're just reinventing how you're going to see the world, and you're bringing yourself back into balance. So we're going to go through those. We're also going to talk about kind of 3 of the most common roadblocks that are in the stages of transformational change. They're kind of built in. I like to call them like bridge points and crossroads. And we're going to talk about who normally shows up. If you think about the myth of crossroads or a bridge, you kind of think of like 3 Billy Goats Gruff. So we're going to talk a little bit about like trolls, and then the beings that kind of meet you at those crossroads that give you options, and what those blocks are, and then how to move through them still in alignment with who you are and your values. Then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into week 4, which says, hey, I'm a butterfly now. I'm out of my little cocoon. Now what? So, and that's a part of transformation that we don't normally talk about, which is, okay, I've gone from being a caterpillar to a butterfly, but now I don't know how to be in this world, because I got really used to the world over here on this side. And now that I'm through my transformation, what am I supposed to do now? So we'll take a little bit deep dive into what's the next steps that typically come after a transformation. All right, so you guys ready to get started? We're going to dive right into what is transformation and what is the package. So transformation, there's no way around it. It basically is a personal journey. That means that there is going to be a death and a rebirth. So a way of being and interacting or thinking or seeing the world, or how you used to be, no longer fits. Your soul is calling to like break out and to step into its balance. Usually something feels out of balance in your world, and sometimes you just can't put your finger on it. So it is the death and rebirth cycle, and the rebirth part is the part of you stepping into more of your personal power, into that empowered, freeing state where you can stretch those wings like a beautiful butterfly and be able to fly into the next part of your life. And that's why transformation usually has the butterfly kind of symbol with it, because it was a caterpillar, it went into a cocoon, and it had to completely dissolve in that cocoon. It had not one piece of it remained untouched. And then it reforms itself back into a new being that when it opens up, and it comes out into the world, it has to uncurl those little wings that have been up in there and start to kind of figure out, how is it going to fly? What is it going to do? So that's basically what a transformation is. You go from point A to point B and you turn into goo in the middle and you come out kind of different. And ideally freer, more in alignment with who you truly are on the inside. Who is your soul? Mind, body, and soul are realigning and coming together so that they are in balance, because that's what we want. And that's why once you're in a transformation, it is really hard to get out of it. And trust us, our brain tries. It tries really hard to say, get us back to status quo, get us back to the known, K-N-O-W-N, known, that we have in our mind that it feels safe in. And so there's a reason why the struggle feels so real, and it is real in transformational change. And it's because you're getting ready to transfer into an unknown, and your brain says, that's dangerous, that's a saber-toothed tiger, like, let's not do that. And it tries to pull you back to what it, quote, knows, and makes it life safe again. So that's the transformational process. So what packages does it come in? If you're kind of wondering, well, maybe I think I might be in the start of a transformation. If you're in it, you're going to know you're in it. But sometimes it's good to know the signs of it before it gets there. And there's a couple different ways that transformation can come. One is the big bang, the big huge boom, the earth shattering. The earth was one way and now it is a different way. And that is an opportunity for transformation right in it. And those are the events that we have no control over. Sometimes those are traumatic events, car accidents, illness, different big things that we have absolutely no control over. But in those moments, we have an opportunity to really reevaluate and decide, how do I want to show up? Usually those are the moments where we kind of think, whoo, our breath is taken away and we don't quite understand, but we go, wow, my world is totally different. And do I want to go back to the world that I was in? And do I even like it? Or are there things about it that I didn't like? And if so, maybe I can change them. And this is also where I will give you guys a little hint on the stages that we're going to cover next week. Try not to get too off topic. But this is also when we try to go, well, I'll just jump straight to the promised land, and I call it the promised land thinking, and I'll skip the whole middle part of this journey. And that doesn't work. We can try it. Think of New Year's resolutions. That's what we all want to do, right? We know that there's a change that needs to happen. We say, okay, I'm going to do this in this year, and you can hold it for 3 days, 3 months, or whatever, but inevitably you backslide because that was just a transition moment. Transformation is when it gets stuck in your heart, and your heart says, I am not letting this go. No amount of my body or my brain is going to get us off target. We are moving forward, and that's the transformational change moment. Sometimes, though, if it's not a big, huge, change being thrust on us, what you do is it's a little feeling of dis-ease. It's a little feeling of discomfort or uneasiness in a situation. So you get a little inkling in your heart that kind of says, I think I'm meant for something a little bit different. I think my job doesn't fit me anymore. And you just walk into your job one day and you kind of look around and you're like, I can't put my finger on it. Something feels off. And you go about your work and you're interacting with your coworkers and everything looks fine from the outside, but on the inside, you're starting to feel different. You're starting to feel maybe some anxiety that you can't put your finger on, or maybe just a little bit of sadness or grief. And you're like, why am I sad? I love this job. I worked hard for this job. Or maybe it's in a relationship that you're starting to feel that way. At some point, that feeling starts to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And you get more and more what's called dissonance between you and whatever it is in your life that is calling to be changed. I like to think of it as magnets, and usually I have some, but I can't find any right now on my desk. If you flip a magnet over, instead of them attracting to each other, if you flip one of them, their polarities actually start to repel each other. and that you can push one around after another. And that is the same thing that starts to happen kind of in our heart space. Maybe it was because you heard a podcast, that you heard something you've never heard before, and your soul just grabbed hold of it. And now it's like echoing around and rattling around inside of you, and you can't unhear it. It's like, oh, that was really true. And it's something now that starts to pull at you. This is when people start to feel that pull of uncertainty or dis-ease. And on the inside, they are starting to feel chaos. No longer does the little boxes of their life that they had perfectly mapped out and feeling nice and safe and secure, do they feel like they fit. You start to feel cramped in your body. You start to feel like this is not enough room, that you need to change and spread out. That is the beginning of what is transformation. That is the package. And there are two choices at this point. If you know that, and you know this is the beginning, you're going to sit down, you're going to step back, and you're going to take a very good look and start to kind of a meditative, reflective stance, and you're going to look at each one of those boxes. And sometimes it's just one box that needs to change, and all the other ones are fine. Sometimes it's an all across the board. It doesn't. Sometimes you don't have a lot of control of when your body says, hey, we're going to come more into alignment with who we truly are, so that we can step into our power and really show up and rock out life in our authentic life and passion and be on purpose. When that happens, all of those little boxes are kind of up for grabs. And it's your best interest to learn how to step back, take an observer point of view, and say, all right, what is calling for transformation? What needs my attention right now? And really look at each part. Because what will happen if you don't take the choice to step into transformation, that dissonance is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it becomes that tsunami event that wipes everything out so that you can start over again. This is where time after time, when what we talk about next week of the stages, that you will have opportunities to make choice after choice, and each choice is going to be met by the saboteur. It's going to happen. You can't get rid of it. Because the saboteur's job, your personal saboteur, is to help you ask the questions of, what am I afraid of? What power am I about ready to step in that I think is going to disturb the status quo? And then how do I choose to step into that power that matches my values and who I am and how I want to show up in the world? Those are the questions that are asked time and time again through every stage. Next week, we're going to go through the 9 stages of transformation so that you will know where they are. In the meantime, I would love it if you could interact with me a little bit so that I can tailor the next couple of podcasts or blogs to match what you might be going through, to give you a little bit of personal information and kind of answer some of your questions. So below this video, if you could, go ahead, let me know, what are some of the stages that transformation has showed up in your life? What are some of the questions that you have about transformation and how to have a little bit more grace and ease through the process? Again, this is a phoenix process. Some part of you that is no longer fitting within your values or who you are or in your highest potential has got to, quote, die in order for a new part to be reborn and give birth to something new and beautiful and loving and empowering. And in that process, there is grief, and there are moments where you just don't feel that you have it in you. But if you know what they are and you know how to work through them and you know what you're looking for, then you feel like you have a lifeline that's kind of got a tether on you that can pull you into the eye of the storm versus being tossed around in the wall of the storm. All right, this is Michelle Holling-Brooks. Again, welcome to the series on transformation. Please send and share this with anybody that you feel would be helpful. Maybe they're in the midst of it and they need a lifeline. And I look forward to seeing you next week as we go through the stages of transformation. Thanks so much.